Hey up, Gordon. How you doing?
No, then Andrew, well, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Brilliant. You got me on your side, so it can't be that bad.
Indeed.
Um, so this is what's the name of our podcast again?
Neurodivergence, more than a label.
More than a label. Right. Okay, neurodivergence more than a label. Do you know what, Gordon? I've been online, yeah, and I typed in Robert Kennedy autism. Now, Robert Kennedy, I don't know really who he is, but he's one of Donald Trump's buddies.
All right.
And I just put Robert Kennedy autism. Listen to what comes up at Google. RFK Jr. pledges to find the cause of autism by September. RFK Jr. seeks environmental cause of autism. Scientists say it's not that. RFK Jr. contradicts experts by linking autism rise to environmental toxins. Kennedy calls autism preventable, drawing ire from researchers. Claiming autism epidemic, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. describes da 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 da, and it goes da 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 da. Statement on Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s comments regarding the cause of autism. Uh, there's a lot going on there, isn't there?
Isn't it just? And of
And
course,
so
everybody agrees that it can find something that's causing autism by September because it's not far away.
it's not far away. It's good. I think we're very lucky to have people like him on the team, you know, who can do this stuff for us. Hang on, I've got my shoe. Right. So, Robert F. Kennedy. So, I don't know a lot about him. I guess he's one of the Kennedys.
I would have
Uh,
thought so.
Yeah, but I don't really know. But
No,
he's banging around on the internet. Really, we could do without him. It's
we
just
could do
gonna,
without him. And I think the first thing that springs to mind is, oh, it's American. I'll switch off. I'm not really bothered.
yeah,
However, I have heard that Nigel Farage feels that there's too many autism diagnoses being branded about as well, which means actually it's not just being contained into American or whatever. It is a lot of top people's opinions coming through, which is going to affect a lot of people.
yeah. Well, this is why I wondered if we wanted to talk about our inverted commas autism epidemic. And whilst we're at it, we could sprinkle a little bit of ADHD on it as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think
So, um, obviously, I don't know, epidemic, really, it's not well chosen words, is it, Gordon? Do you know what I mean?
it's
It's
not.
um so again, last night I read an article about why are our diagnoses increasing. And I think for me, the two things that spring to mind for me, it's a very wide subject, is number one, we have got better at identifying this. That's a fact. You
Yeah,
know, we're really quite good at this now. Could do better, but and secondly, um, what I think is that the way we um, define autism now has changed. So
oh, definitely.
are we no longer? I don't know. So I'm doing different work in different places. Yeah, and so I've got the workshops that I do. Um, on autism, ADHD, and I draw in a lot of information from the National Autistic Society. And they've got the do say, don't say page, which you've seen, about the language that we could use. And
Mhm.
one of the things that they say we can say is the autism spectrum is on the spectrum. That's one of the languages.
Yeah.
Having said that, I've been reading information elsewhere, and there's another organization I work for who are trying to get me to, sorry, who have their sort of definition, and they talk about it being more like a scattergram, a spiky profile, and they say that the spectrum is unhelpful because a spectrum puts forth the proposition that the autistic spectrum starts at mild and goes to severe,
Hmm.
which is not the case because this undermines some autistic people. Um, it suggests that their autism isn't as much of a difficulty to them or identity to them or whatever they'd like to do and say about that. And so this scattergram idea, which we've been inadvertently part of with our fabulous with our fabulous mind map that we created all over about what autism is, um, sort of takes the spectrum thing out of it, really, doesn't it?
It does, but is it just not a matter of people not necessarily understanding what a spectrum is? Because we talk about, or we don't, but some people talk about high functioning or low functioning,
Yeah,
etc. Where are you on the spectrum? But you can be anywhere on the spectrum at any point of any day.
yeah,
And depending, regardless of how, whether you've got a high functioning or low functioning, it just depends on how are you coping today,
yeah.
and your presentation on that. So
Mm,
it, I suppose the profiling and the spiking can make it a bit clearer for some
yeah.
people, but it's 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 just another way of trying to detract, isn't it?
Maybe I'm quite keen on the whole spiky profile thing.
Right.
And I tell you, and just before we get hate mail, um, Gordon and I don't don't consider high functioning, low functioning. That's not part of it. Um, I assume I'm speaking for you as well,
Well, oh,
but
yeah, definitely. For me, it should never be part of the vocabulary, but it is.
it
And
is.
people have got, on paper, high functioning autism diagnosed.
Except that when we look at the NAS, National Autistic Society, they are opposed to
Mm.
high low functioning. And the one that got me was years and years ago was Ros Blackburn. Now, Ros Blackburn is a speaker in autism. She's fabulous. She she's very intuitive, very she explains things incredibly well, and you'll book her for an hour, and she'll stay for 3 hours and tell you everything about autism. And I would suggest she's one of the best public speakers I've ever seen in any subject, let
Hmm.
alone autism. Now, Roz described herself some years ago, I don't know if she still does, as low functioning. And my question is, how can you be that low functioning with that ability of speech?
Yeah.
Well, because it's the spiky profile, isn't it?
Yes.
How how can you do that without doing that? I'm going to shut up in a second, Gordon. Give you a go.
Oh, you're all right.
Okay, so the other thing is, for me, now my diagnosis is of ADHD. It's a severe ADHD diagnosis. We don't have severe ADHD, a severe autism diagnosis anymore, but it's quite acceptable to have a severe ADHD diagnosis.
Hmm.
One of the things that I always say is I don't cope very well socially. Put me in a group of people and I might mask it really well. I might not, but what I will do is not cope well. And I don't really like speaking to people and things like that, depending which Andrew you get. Now, within that, yeah, I can stand in front of 500 people and deliver a talk that I've not even planned. People say, how can you do those things? That's the spiky profile, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
I can do that because, yeah, um, Um, I could do that because uh, I'm in control of the public speaking thing. Used to be the same when I was in a group, Gordon. I used to play in a band, and people would come up, be wild, raucous on stage, and then people go, "Oh, I love that," and I go, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah.
And so, it's that thing, isn't it? And so it's a very confusing thing for people. And I think they've got this idea of this epidemic of, they don't know about spiky profiles. They don't know about the scattergram. They don't really understand the spectrum. And it's nice and easy for them to say, well, it's an epidemic. Everybody wants it. We had a guy on the radio the other day who said, not everyone who loses their keys has got ADHD. Well, he's right, sort of,
It is right, yeah.
but what he's saying is that, but you dig a bit deeper, he says people are just, people just want this diagnosis.
Yeah, and it's looking into, I suppose, in terms of how much of these things affect you on a day-to-day
Yeah,
basis and prevents you from being able to function like everybody else in day-to-day life.
yeah,
Because there's still now a lots of people sort of saying we're all a little bit autistic, we've all
yeah.
got traits of autism.
Mm,
That may be true, but it's not at the same time because it's not affecting you, and you've
yeah.
got to look at, and I suppose that's where the spiky profile um, brings it into focus, really, isn't it? Is
Well, it
it
is. Yeah, yeah,
we all struggle with our memory, we all struggle with this. However, you don't focus and hyper focus on that one area because you
mm,
can't do it. I can't move forward because of it,
mm,
because it's affected me so badly. I've made a mistake, and now I've got to analyze that mistake to the nth degree as to why did I do that.
yeah,
Most people
yeah.
don't do that, but if you're autistic, that oh my God, we need to know that.
Yeah, we do, and I'm gonna read something out to you here that I've got. This is a message that came to me from somebody. So it's a um, um, hey, I hope you're well. I've been discussing something with my perinatal mental health nurse, and we think I should go for an ADHD assessment. Just wondered, in your expert opinion, if you think that's a worthwhile idea. Um, Hang on. First question is, why is the perinatal mental health nurse suggesting this?
Yeah.
This seems to me someone overstepping their boundary a little bit. I mean, they may well be an ADHD expert, and
Mm.
but we do wonder about that, and I do agree that there are a lot of people seeking ADHD diagnosis at the moment.
Yes. Well, I think you mentioned it a few podcasts back about being, is it fashionable? Uh,
Yeah.
and we were sort of talking about the fashionable is it's in the limelight. There's a lot of celebrities
Mm,
talking about their late diagnosis, and that's not to detract from they are, and if they've got a diagnosis, then there will be ADHD. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. It's
mm,
just that people are actually questioning, particularly
mm,
the sort of young adult or middle-aged adults are questioning, why did I struggle? And actually, it's okay for
mm,
them
mm,
to question. Maybe I should be questioning.
mm,
And we've seen it a lot where we are doing workshops for children,
mm.
and then the parents are going, "Oh my God, that's me."
Yeah, yeah.
But it's never been explained to them in such a way until the
Mm,
penny drops and think, I now need to. So people are sort of saying, actually, I want answers.
yeah, they are.
Um,
They
and I
are, but
think that's why it's becoming a little bit more as an epidemic, if they want to call it that. But people are
yeah.
being a bit more savvy with their health and sort of say, I'm not going to accept that I'm depressed
Mm.
or whatever. There's something more to it.
Well, this is the issue, isn't it? Because that people are asking the questions. Unfortunately, the people, I think people are asking the wrong questions.
Hmm.
And so, for example, if we talk about ADHD, and by the way, Gordon and I also don't subscribe to the epidemic theory, we're just quoting other people,
We are.
but, but what I would say is you're asking the wrong questions. So here we go. When I went and saw an ADHD diagnosis, uh, um, I went to a clinical psychologist and I said, listen, I think that I've got ADHD. Can we do a diagnosis? That's what everybody does, right?
Hmm.
In their various forms. But here's where the issue was. He said, no, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. He said, what we do is we have a nice deep dive, that's my words, not his, into you and find out where the difficulties are coming from and what it is. I mean, we've done stuff together, you and I, where we're looking at fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and the absolutely massive similarities
Yeah,
between FASD and ADHD. How
yeah,
do you tell the difference? Well, one of the ways you can tell the difference is brain scans. But who gets a brain scan on an ADHD diagnosis?
yeah,
You know, I'm talking about fMRI, magnetic resonance imaging. Nobody gets that. So how do we know? How do we know what what really is going on?
yeah, yeah.
So go on.
We do through this is packed through the Bromhead Medical Charity,
Mm,
a lot of private diagnosis.
mm,
And we decided about 18 months ago is that we will not put anybody through an ADHD or an ASD diagnostic assessment until they've had a sensory assessment. And the lady that provides a sensory assessment looks at everything,
mm.
whether it's needed to speech and language, everything to do with the sensory, and also looking at the trauma side of things as
Yeah,
well,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because a lot of them are overlapping. And if we don't get the understanding of, um, this is a lot of this has been brought on by trauma,
Mm,
and trauma is a sort of well, if I relate it to myself and someone say, "Oh, I think your son may be traumatized," I take that personally as that. Well, I haven't done anything to traumatize him. I haven't done this and that.
mm.
And it's the misunderstanding of what trauma actually is and the
Yeah, yeah.
triggers and how that goes forward. And it's let's deal with the trauma. Once we've dealt with the trauma, then we can then visit to sort of see is it this or is it that,
Mm,
um, and so forth. But I think the process of the diagnostic process should start with everybody, whether they go private or they go through the NHS, should be a sensory assessment or to rule out all these other things first.
mm,
And the part of the journey at the end is to sort of say, okay, now we're going to do a diagnostic
mm,
assessment because we've been able to deal with everything along the way. We're reducing the anxieties, the stresses, and everything else. Now, that doesn't mean that we are sort of saying the diagnosis of autism or ADHD is wrong. It just means there are other things in there as well creating
yeah.
difficulties that need to be addressed. And if we're just sort of lumping it into, is it ADHD or autism, we're missing a trick and prolonging difficulties for people along the way. As I see it.
Okay, so what I'm going to tell you here, right? And I'm just okay. Um, Autism is a drain on taxpayers' money. There you go.
Lovely.
Tell me about that.
So, you just have to look at it, and yes, it is a drain of taxpayers' money because we have to do things about it. Of course,
Mm,
it's not. Of course, it's not.
no.
The way people create the issues then does cause people to spend money or do things. Because
Mm,
if we were to actually look at things, I'll let's take behavior either in the home
mm,
or in school.
mm,
You don't behave in the right way, so I'm going to punish you.
mm,
The person who is struggling for whatever reason then reacts in the way that then makes us a bit more angry with them. And
mm,
so therefore, we're going to put in sanctions,
mm,
which then is going to anger them more. And then we've
mm,
got a dysregulated person, which is taking up, if we look at schools, taking up individuals' time, which is
mm,
causing money, which then relates to some probably three senior leadership who are spending an hour, 2 hours trying to deal with something that could have been dealt with very, very simply by
mm,
ignoring and sort of saying, I'll talk to you later because I think it's something I need to discuss with you at a
mm,
later stage, and I do apologize. And don't go down all of that route and then come back to it. But
mm.
oh no, we've got to have, you're going to comply with this, you're going to do it the way we want it, etc., etc. And now we've created an issue which has created a financial burden because we
Abs
haven't this time.
Absolutely, and I think that's very important to sort of say. Um, and in the early days of my work in autism, that not only did I not recommend resources that cost money, there were no resources.
Yeah.
There was nothing, or not that came my way, and so um, uh, it was all about what you did, not the equipment that you used to do it,
Yeah.
and so how you communicated and you know, um, just common sense stuff, really. Now, common sense is a bit of an unfair statement because actually it's only common sense if you know it. But there were no, there was none of this. It shouldn't cost money at all. We do now. We have organisations that do produce very high quality product, very high quality resources that do help. But even then, you know, do we use much of it? No, we parents make a decision to buy it sometimes,
Mhm.
more often than not in schools. If I say something like a weighted blanket, the school don't pay for the weighted blanket, the family pays for the weighted blanket, you
Mhm.
know. I'm using weighted blanket as a sort of an example. And so actually the only money people really tend to be spending is their own is
Yeah.
is 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 their own. The possibility of getting things like one-to-one support, which is not really one-to-one support anymore anyway, um, is it's hard.
Mhm.
You've got to. It's not like a load of people are going into schools and saying, "My child's autistic, give me 20 grand." That's not how it works.
No.
You know, and I mean, one particular local authority is is saying we cannot we in any observation report we are not allowed to make reference to anything that costs money.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
real because I had the phone call.
Yeah, and I've heard it from parents and that have been in that exact same
Mm,
situation where they've been backwards and forwards with an educational psychologist.
mm,
That oh, we're having to change this and we're having to change that.
mm,
Why? Why have to change it? If your report is your report, why have to change it?
yeah,
Well, as you covered previously, there are reasons why we have to change them,
mm,
because we need to get something rather than nothing.
yeah,
And it's
exactly that. Yeah,
playing that
exactly
game,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the words I had from this particular organization, they said to me, um, if we leave this in, we can't give you any more work.
Mm,
So like you said, it's not backing down really. It's going, well, this is a good report. We can edit this stuff out, which would have been very, very useful. But let's look at the rest of it and say, well, actually, we can still help and we can still do something. And as you just said, I think you just said something is better than nothing.
yeah, more in a roundabout way. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So, it's tricky, but you know, um I think go on.
No, you're talking about where it's using taxpayers' money and that, and I just feel that if we put things in place correctly along the way,
Mm,
the expenditure and the drain is going to be very, very minimal
mm,
compared to an awful lot of other things that are out there.
mm,
And if we take the example of this, oh, you and I think we're both on the same page with this one. Um, Zero tolerance
mm,
or whatever it is that no, our staff have zero tolerance to abusive behavior, to violent
mm,
behavior, to whatever. um and when you we'll use the My son phoned up the doctors. He was really, really anxious because he was in an awful lot of pain.
Mm.
Wasn't getting answers and that. And the receptionist sort of said, "Right, can I ask you some questions?" So he answered the questions. And they said, "Right, um, if you can phone back in 5 minutes, we'll have an answer for you." So he came down, phoned back in 5 minutes, and it was a matter of, right, we haven't been able to do this. You're going to have to go and do it. It says, no, you told me if I come phone back in 5 minutes, you'd have an answer for me.
Mm.
And now you're telling me you haven't done that because you're wanting this to be done and that to be done. He said, I need an answer. And I phoned up for an answer. And she says, I don't like your tone of voice,
Yeah.
son. Will you please stop shouting at me? He said, I'm not shouting at you. I'm telling you that you said this, this, this. I have done that.
Mm.
And now you're saying something else. I'm getting a little bit frustrated
Yeah.
and really worried. I'm sorry. Your tone of voice, I do not like. I'm going to put the phone down and put the phone down. And
Mm.
I
I
was,
know.
wow.
Well, you've heard me talk about this a lot, and and certainly the I worked with the Institute for Chartered Banking, and we had a whole because I have had a personal experience of 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 being physically ejected, and I mean physically ejected from one of the high street banks.
Mm,
That I did a lot of work well, say a lot of work. I did a session with the Institute for Chartered Banking and with one of the other banks, and to say, look, if you are in a setting like a bank, could be anywhere really,
yeah.
could be a train station, doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah.
People are in there because they've got something they need to do.
Hmm.
So in a bank, it's slightly different because if you go to a bank today, now, yeah, um, if you go to a bank, because most banking is online and remote, then if you're going into the bank, you're going in there for a real reason. You're
Yeah.
going in there because you need to be there. Mrs. Whitehouse is only in the last 2 or 3 years become Mrs. Whitehouse, and she had a refund from um, the DVLA, but it was in her old name, and her bank account's in her new name.
Hmm.
So she was found, in most cases when this happens, if you get your wedding certificate, your marriage certificate, and you get your check, you can go and they'll put it through. But the bank didn't. Now, that sounds like a small thing, and they told her what to do and stuff, except for the fact that to get to the bank, she's walked for half an hour. You know, she's got there, she's given up time when she could have been working, etc., etc., etc. And that makes people not agitated, but anxious because actually you've just taken away a load of my time,
Mm.
you know? And and then what then happens is, not in this instance, I have to say, but what can happen is people then would get a little bit what presents as agitated, but I would say is anxious. And they're saying, but I've got my certificate and I've got this and it should be okay, etc., etc. And then they'll go, well, we can't do anything. Sorry. Next,
Yeah.
and you're back to that person with his 5 minutes,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Because, sorry,
No, carry on.
yeah, because again, let's say we're talking to an ADHD or an autistic person at the time, and they said they've gone in with everything they're supposed to have.
Mm.
Why won't you accept it? Because we don't. Now
Yeah.
you can go away and do it, but that's not good enough. Because we don't isn't good enough.
Mm.
It's a matter of, but it's here. I've got it. So again, it's that part that will then draw down on somebody's time and
Mm.
effort to sort of
Mm.
say, right, I now need to get somebody else to come out and deal with this person who's getting really angry
Mm.
and remove them. I need to do that rather than sort of say, I'm ever so sorry. But I think the systems that we have in place as a bank, we need something further, and that should have been put on here. And if it's not, then I apologise.
Mm.
But for this to happen, we need this to do that, and how can we um, help you to get that done quickly and efficiently,
yeah,
rather than just the person delivering the information sort of saying, no, our systems don't allow that. We need this. Off you go and do it. Because if we're to that with everybody, it wouldn't be a problem.
no,
Yet most people, like your wife, and
mm,
could accept, okay, it's a real pain, but
mm,
okay, I'm going to have to do it. If that's your system, that's your system. I wish I'd known before I came here. We'll sort of tut on that. But for if that happened to my son or my daughter, they would get really, really angry because they've
mm,
done what was there to be done.
yeah,
So yeah, you can see the differences and difficulties that come into that, and then yes, that's when it does become a bit of a drain, but it's not the diagnosis of autism or ADHD that's a drain. It's how people then deal with it afterwards, really, isn't it?
100%. Talking to your daughter, by the way, I was in York yesterday, day before yesterday,
You're joking.
and your daughter, well, somebody, yeah, came up from behind and gave me a hug. And it was your daughter.
Oh my goodness, you've not told me that one.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It was kind of funny. We were on a walking tour about witches in York, and then all of a sudden,
My
uh,
daughter appears.
your daughter appears, yeah, like the shopkeeper in Mr. Ben. So
Yes.
yeah, so there you go. Yeah, of all the people I wasn't expecting to bump into in York, it was nice to see her. She was looking well as well.
Thank
Um,
you.
so right, so you've heard me talk about this, and this is an example of absolutely majorly good practice. I was working in a school in Lincolnshire, and it was in a particularly low socioeconomic setting. It had a lot of social problems, and yeah, it had its ups and downs, I would say. And I was in the school one time, and one of the parents came in, effing and blinding, wanting to see that head teacher, fag on like this. I'm not generalizing. This is what happened. Genuinely, this is how it came in. Where this head teacher came out, she said, "Oh dear, Mrs. Smith, I think you need to come into the office and have a chat with me." And then she turned to the secretary. She said, "Could you get Mrs. Smith an ashtray? Not put the cigarette out. Could you get Mrs. Smith an ashtray and make her a cup of tea? Would you? Do you have tea? Do you have sugar? Well, come on in." And it dissipated everything. It just dissipated. Everything became all right. That's how we want it, isn't it? Just,
Yeah,
you know, it's okay. It's very hard to argue with someone who agrees with you. You
yeah.
know, let's talk about this. Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's that lovely moment in in Faulty Towers where somebody's going, "This hotel's terrible," and Faulty goes, "Yeah, it's awful, isn't it?" Oh no, yeah, awful, terrible place. It's hard. It totally, but
Well,
anyway, yeah,
it's the art of deflection, really, isn't
it
it?
is
Because
really, yeah.
yeah, it's
But
whoa, I agree with you. Because you got nowhere to go.
no, no,
I'm up for a fight.
yeah.
Well, what do you mean you agree with me? You can't agree with
You
me.
mustn't agree. But this is how it happens, isn't it? And
Yeah.
so, and so, yeah, it's how you deal with things. And then I do a lot of work in the care system as well.
Mm,
I'm all over the place. I am, as you know, and in the care system, I always say, you know, these young people have got nowhere to go apart from where they are.
yeah.
They can't just go animate's house. They can't just, and so it's difficult for them. And in most cases, they can't just go animate's house. And um, anyway, uh, the thing I always say is go-to people. Who's your go-to person? Everybody has got a go-to person.
They have.
You know, I mean, we've you know, we have someone who works with us, and we send her out as the friend maker. Got this person. and they've just got their diagnosis and they're just a bit confused. And we have a person that will go out and speak to them because they're just nice to people.
Yeah,
And it's a skill. And so the go-to people. And, when my lad Isaac was at school, I'll never forget there was a Liverpudlian woman quite high up on senior leadership who absolutely just totally understood Isaac.
yeah,
So yeah, it's all about the go-to people, isn't it?
it is.
But is it an epidemic?
Well, so
Because
so
we've
here's
yeah,
another thought, Andrew.
yeah,
Um, if you the introduction of educational healthcare plans,
yeah.
and we know how they're supposed to work, etc.
I'm still not
But
sure, actually.
all right, I'll not give you a lesson today, but
Okay.
what we can do. However, you do know that you do not need a diagnosis for an EHCP.
No.
Um, but the amount of parents that are being told
Mm,
we can't get you an HCP because we need to do this, this, and this, but we also it'd be helpful for a diagnosis. If you can get a diagnosis of autism or ADHD, then we
mm,
could look at it.
yeah.
And what I think is happening is schools are either being told. Now, this is my opinion. So if you want to shout at anybody, it's me. But schools are being told by local authorities, by whomever, to delay the need for an EHCP.
Yeah.
Now, if we need to delay a need for an EHCP, what better way of saying go and get a diagnosis? We can't do anything without a diagnosis.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
more proof. We need more evidence
Yeah.
because we're talking 2 years, or in effect.
I know. I know. And this is also reflects in these special educational needs and disability code of practice where again I know I'm a broken record with this, but it's important. May have. May have. Yeah. And up to the age of 25 in full-time education, if you may have, so if I spot someone who I think is ADHD, autistic, but we don't really have a diagnosis, uh, the guidance, not law, guidance, the guidance is that you treat them as though they have ADHD or that they are autistic.
Mhm.
So that's the way we're supposed to do it, because and the idea of that was it was supposed to save money.
Well, if it's done right
Mm,
and you put the interventions in place early,
yeah,
we wouldn't just spend half the amount of money that is being spent now
no,
because we're keeping somebody um, focused, we're keeping them feeling safe,
mm.
we're dealing with their needs as they're entitled to, and therefore the anxiety doesn't spill over. And yes, they may still be autistic, they may still be, but they don't necessarily need at this minute in time a diagnosis to get through.
So let me just refer to you to something that I've got here. Um, it's great this because it makes it look like hang on. Okay, this is I'm just trying to find it. Right, okay. Um, right, okay. I'm struggling to find it. But basically, t there was a TV show, a radio show on BBC Radio 4, um, and you can refer to this. It was called The Briefing Room,
Yes,
and I think I sent it to you.
you did.
But anyway, yes, I did send it to you. So if we look at Gordon, if I find Gordon, and there we go, and I want to search. So hopefully, BRIEF search. Um, no, okay,
Was on a
right.
Thursday at 4 o'clock on such and such a date in February.
Was it really? Have you
It
found
was.
it?
I haven't found it. I just know that's when it was roughly.
Good grief. So basically, all these, all this stuff. Right, let's have a little look. The briefing room. I'm wasting your time, I feel,
It's
but
on BBC Sound, isn't it?
uh, BBC Sounds briefing room. One of the episodes was about the cost of the current situation with autism, and so
Mm,
you can go in and you can have a little look and and probably find this article on BBC Sounds. Um, but it is in there. It basically is in there,
yeah, yeah.
and
Very
um,
interesting.
it was very interesting. And basically, it in a very BBC Radio 4 way. Um, in a BBC Radio 4 way, they do it in a very measured sort of like what this is what it really is. This is where the money comes from. This is what, and if you're interested, I can't recommend anything better. It really is bang on. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's that. Also, a colleague of mine and a friend of yours too, Gordon, sent me an article last night. This is from BBC News and it's called Are There More Autism People Now? Okay. Why is the number of autism diagnoses changing and what does it mean for autistic people? So I think those are two little bits to find. You shouldn't be. BBC Sounds is brilliant. And the show was called The Briefing Room. So you've just got to go back through maybe maximum 10 episodes to find
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
But these, the information is out there if you want it. But question is there an autism epidemic? I mean, well, first of all, it's not an epidemic, is it? This is kind of metaphorical speaking, um, which is less than helpful because having not long come out of a pandemic, people are going to get the wrong idea of what they're trying to say there.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
I just think we should be looking um, at everything and not putting it down to it's either autism, neurodivergent,
Mm.
ADHD. It's a matter of
Well,
there is an issue. What is that issue?
so talking of issues, and again bringing my son Isaac into it, six diagnoses, no, six identified conditions, not six
Mm,
diagnoses. This is good, you know, um, uh, because he managed to get identified six things. He's done well with that. But he's a bit of a he's a bit of a fighter, really. I mean, a few weeks
yes.
ago he was given a diagnosis uh, of of what was he given obsessive compulsive disorder, and he was medicated, and he went back and he said, "Look, this is not right. This isn't right." And
Mm,
now they're looking at now they're looking at bipolar, yeah, but only because he's gone back,
yeah,
you know, and so uh, we do have to consider that as well. The
yeah,
fact
yeah.
that you may have to fight when you're not well enough to fight. That's
And
a
that's generally the way,
Yeah, yeah.
unfortunately. You can accept it, but if you know there's something, if you've been given a label or whatever it is, and you think, well, actually, that doesn't fit.
Mm,
Challenge it. Don't have to.
yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be right.
Except for the fact that, and this is what concerns me, and I'm a very paranoid person anyway, so but here's the problem I see that these right wing people are getting into power left, right, and center, and they're making populist statements that say things like, you know, autism's not a real thing,
Mm.
therefore we're not going to fund it anymore. Are we going to have some big, big problems?
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it when they started sort of saying this sort of thing. I think, okay, if you think there's a pandemic now, by
just wait.
him suggesting this is
Yeah.
going to tip it over the balance because everybody is going to sort of say, I'm sorry, but I'm struggling here. And if it's not that, what is it? And it will come out somewhere else because
And it
it's,
does. And it
yeah,
does, Gordon. So I can remember, look, we're older gentlemen now, aren't we? And and so I can remember when they stopped doing dyslexia, stopped
yeah,
diagnosing dyslexia, and called it SLD, specific learning difficulties or something like that. But anyway, and what happened? I'll tell you what happened. The year that happened, I said, in 7 years' time, we're going to have a massive problem. Now, if you look at school setting for 7 years, yeah,
mm,
what I meant was you're going to go into school year one. I know we go in at year R, but for more formal writing, we're starting at year one. And I said, by the time these kids get to year seven, the secondary school won't know what to do with them.
yeah,
And I predicted that. I was like SEN's Nostradamus. I said, 7 years, this is going to be a problem. And in 7 years, my phone did not stop ringing for dyslexia training.
yeah.
That's there, isn't it? Um, I hope we don't have that situation.
I hope not, because hopefully there's enough people out there to sort of say, stop being stupid.
Yeah, but there's enough people out there that voted very badly recently. You
Yeah,
know.
well, let's hope that voting was just sort of a slap in the face to sort of say, waking up and do your job properly.
Well, you know what I did? I voted for the Green Party.
Yeah,
Now, I've never voted for the Green Party. I was just looking at this list and I went, you know what? We got to make some kind of statement.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, the poor old Green Party, they've gone, oh God, we've got loads of votes, really popular. No, it's people like me making a statement. But but yeah, we do have to concern ourselves. We must be concerned
Mm,
because these people are becoming more and more popular. They're getting more and more of a sway, and there's more and more people who believe them and will follow them.
yeah, yeah.
But what do you think, people out there? Let us know. You know,
Please do.
yeah, we could get through Gordon at Packed. Gordon, hang on, Packed. Packed what?
So
Inquiries.
packed, PAACT, packed
Packed.
support
Packed
at
support.
hotmail.co.uk.
Or whitehouseandrew at hotmail.co.uk. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Right.
Excellent.
See you next week, Gordon.
See you next week. Bye bye.